Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar with Barnardos. We might wait just a couple of seconds for any stragglers to join us. Thank you to those that are on time. So this webinar tonight is the Rainbow Families webinar with Barnardos, looking at the pathways to parenthood through fostering and adoption for LGBTQ plus people. My name's Ashley Scott, and I'm the founder and executive officer of Rainbow Families. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. For me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, but I'm aware we've got people from all over the state on our panel, but potentially all over the country joining us tonight. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So, as I mentioned, my name's Ashley Scott. I use he, him pronouns. My husband and I have got two children who were born through surrogacy. And that's only because when I tried to start my family, fostering and adoption was illegal for queer couples, LGBTQ plus people. So I had to look down other avenues, but thankfully that law has changed now. And so fostering and adoption is a really strong pathway to parenthood for LGBTQ plus people. A little bit about Rainbow Families. So we support, connect, and empower LGBTQ plus parents and their kids. We do a lot of work in the advocacy space. We've also do a lot of community connection, so play groups and new parents groups and weekend catch-ups that happen all over the country. And we also have an education side to the work we do, and this is a really lovely example of that safe and inclusive education for queer parents and their kids. We're joined tonight by two wonderful carers and also one of the staff from Barnardos. So Barnardos has had a beautiful partnership with Rainbow Families for many years now. I don't know if we can even remember how long it's been, Amy. Uh, Barnardos is a really lovely partner of Rainbow Families. I've got a bit of a spiel about Barnardos, so to paint the picture. So Barnardos is dedicated to the prevention of trauma in children and support families to be the very best they can be. Barnardos help children to recover and thrive and find safe homes for children through foster care and open adoption. Barnardos have been big supporters of rainbow families and queer people becoming parents and part of our Making Rainbow Families seminar for many years now. Tonight's session is for people looking to start a family, but also for existing parents in the Rainbow Families community who are hoping to grow their families. I mentioned my husband and I have got two children and we are in the thick of it. But down the track, I love the idea that when we've got a little bit more time on our hands, we might be able to support some other young people through fostering. So we have Amy Weeks from Barnardos with us tonight, and she's going to talk to us about all of the different options for LGBTQ plus people who are looking to start their family, as well as Simone and John, who are long-term carers. Um, I might head over to you, Simone, if you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on who's in your family at the moment and how you came to be a foster carer.
Right. Well, I'm Simone, and my wife Louise is currently doing mothering hour with our foster baby at the moment. So she's just having dinner. Um, she and I have been together for about 8 years, and we've been married for four of those. Um, I came into fostering long before coming out. um, so I've been doing it for 20 years now, and a little bit more than 20 years. And I came into it when I had twins myself. I was a single mother um, after my husband and I separated. And um, they started school, and then I started to think, what else can I do? What am I good at? And a friend of mine said, have you ever considered fostering? And then that was the beginning of my fostering journey. I inquired with docs at the time, and they snapped me up very quickly. 6 months of intensive training, very, very lengthy interviews, and then I was signed up and got my first placement. Yeah, so just kind of fell into it, but then there was no letting go once I was started down the journey with fostering.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Simone. John, what about you? How did you get into fostering?
Well, we were living, well, my now husband, we've just recently got married. So after being together for 42 years, we thought, well, probably we do like each other. So I can actually say my now husband and I um, um, saw an ad in the local paper for Barnardos. And we thought, yeah, look, that's a pretty good idea. We were in our late 40s and thought, yeah, I think we're ready to have some little people in our lives. So we applied, and again, like you, Simone, was snapped up.
Mm,
We went through the process of with Barnardo's then, and it was probably not as rigorous as it is today, although it still took a lot of our time. But anyway, that aside, we were quickly onto our fostering our first child, and it was a baptism of fire. What did we get ourselves into? Do we really want to do this? How can we get out of it?
mm,
Jesus, it was tough, but we stuck at it. And subsequently, we have fostered babies. We've fostered toddlers, 8 to 10-year-olds, um, and preteens and teenage girls, boys and girls, family groups, all sorts. So we've kind of covered the full gamut. Plus, we have adopted. And we'd adopted, I was just listening to you, Ashley, there. We were probably when we started out, it was only me, or it was either Dennis or I, but it had turned out to be me that could actually adopt. And we thought, no, don't not do that. And we then waited, and we were probably one of the first um, gay couples when the law has changed to become foster parent, to become adoptive parents. So
wow.
that was, I don't know how long ago that was. Our son is now coming up to 21. So I think we got him as a baby. And I think we adopted him around about the age of 8. So
Wow.
it must be about 12 years ago, I think. Anyway, currently we have a young lass in care. She's between um, carers. She's just waiting for a full-time placement. Um, so the house is fairly quiet, just having one child. We do a lot of respite for the agency that we're with, which is Barnardos in the Illawarra. So we're kept pretty busy here in the Highlands.
It sounds like it, and trailblazers as well, both of you, by
Oh,
the
absolutely, Ashley.
way. Oh, Amy, I'm keen to bring you in here so you can introduce yourself as well, and also give us a bit of an overview of what is fostering and what are the different ways of fostering. I mean, John, you've mentioned respite there, short-term fostering, but also adoption. So it sounds like there's a lot of different options available. Amy, do you want to run us through some of those?
Yeah, sure. And I feel very much newer to the system. I've only been with Barnardo's 12 years, not 20 or 25, I think it is, John. So um, yeah, look, and I think that's one thing to say about Barnardo's is that we do consider ourselves a bit of a family and that we have those long-term relationships. And a lot of agencies do have that turnover of staff, and that's natural and that will happen. But there's a lot of people that's been at Barnardo's for a long time, carers and staff alike, which is lovely. So yeah, at Barnardo's, we, I guess, provide all types of care. So, there's what I like to say the entry level of dipping your toe in with some respite care, where you might be providing care if you're available on a weekend. Maybe you're providing care one weekend a month, or if you're happy to be contacted when there might be a need, you might do some crisis respite care. And then there's more ongoing care types. So whether that's short term, where someone might come to you because they're in between placements, or it might be that they're a new entry into care and Barnardo's and the court is looking at whether or not they can be restored to their family, or whether or not they need some permanent care arrangements in foster care. So that's what we call our temporary family care or restoration carers. And Simone's one of those carers. And then we have our permanent care and adoption programs. So those programs are for children who the court have decided, unfortunately, there's no realistic possibility of restoring those children to their parents, and have explored all kinship options, and there aren't people within their family network to take care of them. And so we look to the carers that want to grow their family and match them with an appropriate family. And those children may go on to be adopted. So we can dually authorize people who are interested in progressing in adoption. And John and his husband have adopted. Or it might be that you're caring for that child through till 18. Or until they, reach independence, which John and his husband have also provided that care type. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Amy. So it sounds like there's a few different options, and if people are starting out this process either as first-time parents or looking to grow their family, that respite might be a really lovely way of trying it on and seeing if it fits rather than making a big commitment. And then there are other people in our community who I know really want that long-term connection, and would love to adopt a child down the track, and so they would go and be matched with a family that or with a child that needs that long-term care. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, some people come in with one thing in mind and that changes into something else, particularly with respite, that, you might start doing that because you've got your own children that are, you're still supporting through to independence. But then as that time sort of goes on, you decide, actually, I think I could maybe do short-term care. Or maybe I could do something more now if those children are moving towards independence. And that's, I guess, definitely what we've seen with some of our carers that come in as respite carers, is often they evolve to different care types, but also they develop their skills and confidence along the way.
Great. So not a one size fits all, which sounds like it works for the diversity of our community as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
Simone, I'd love to hear from you because it sounds like you have lots of little ones come and go from your house over the years. How do they come to be placed with you, and how do you know if it's going to be a good fit for your family? Are you able to say, oh, actually, I don't think that little one's going to be right for us, or how do you know about that, whether it's going to be
So
a fit?
I do have a fairly tight criteria now that I've been doing it for so many years. But of course, when I first started out, I was like, yes, any baby, just give anyone, I'm fine, any age, you know. And then I quickly learned that, okay, I need to set boundaries and guidelines of exactly the parameters of the child I can care for. But you sort of don't really know whether they're going to be a good fit or not. It's kind of just you make it work. And so my parameters are the age group that short term does tend to be a little bit longer than what it used to be. So we're sort of making ourselves available 1 to 2 years in a short term placement rather than used to be 2 to 6 months. So we all already know that it's a longer placement. And so I guess as far as fit, it's just now that I don't, the other thing to consider is other children in the home. So when I first started out, I had my own daughters. And as I said, I was a single mother. So I had the twins and they were school age. And so I had to make sure that the child that I had wasn't going to be too disruptive or have too many medical needs, or there was all these other things that I had to factor in. But now that it's just my wife and myself, I'm a lot more available for high needs babies, and I've become very experienced with dealing with drug affected babies and babies that are withdrawing and babies that need lots of medical attention, babies that have lots of family time visits with their family. And so I need to be available for all those days of the week and however frequent it is. So you just sort of work out. And it's not something you're going to know straight away. You have to do a few placements to realize, okay, what is my groove? And I've worked out that 0 to 12 months is my groove, is my thing, it's my specialty. I fatten them up, get them thriving, get them, moving and doing all the physical activities they need to do, and all the milestones. So that's my niche. And then, but it turns out we've had babies a fair bit past that 12 months age, just because they were the original placement and they've, got a bit older. But I don't accept a starting age above the 12 months, because I know I'm going to have them for quite a while. But yeah, this is sort of no real way of working it out. But you do need, everyone has a voice. Even when you have a placement, you still can feedback to your caseworker, and if it's not the right fit for your family, then you do need to speak up and other arrangements can be made. It's awful to have a placement and feel like you can't say anything because you've said yes to this placement. So always feel like you can communicate with your caseworker, and they can support you and help you out and see what it is that's not working.
Mm. That's really good advice. Amy, does that happen often? And what does that caseworker support look like, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, look, every child has a caseworker attached to them, and that caseworker will be in regular contact with the foster carers, particularly if a child's in a short-term placement and the matter is before the court. And that's what Simone was talking about, is that over the years, unfortunately, the court process and that time frame has extended, so those placements go on for longer. And so that does sometimes cause some challenges, because people have lives. People sometimes become unwell, or they need to go and see family overseas, or the needs of the child change over that time, and it becomes challenging. So it is important to be talking to your caseworker, and the caseworker can put in supports. It might be that we're looking at respite, particularly if it's an older child. It might be that there's some support services that can come and help out in the home. Or it might be that we can move that child on and transition them to their next placement earlier with more knowledge of what their needs are. So caseworkers would be in contact on at least a weekly basis with those short-term new placements. And in some cases, they might be seeing you up to 3 times a week, doing family time visits and things like that. So definitely always available. And there is also a 24-hour on-call support. So for outside of business hours, weekends, if anything comes up, there's someone who's available to support you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. John, you've had lots of kids come through your home over the years, and not all babies. Like Simone, you've had some older kids join your family. And these kids come with the history and birth families, families of origin. What I think some people, watching this would worry potentially about what that contact with birth families looks like. What's your experience been there?
Well, I must admit, the first time that I had to work with a birth family, I felt quite uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, and that was the only time that I felt that I'm the only queer in the village here. That it was there was just something about it. Subsequently, we have been doing this for a long time, so now it's perfectly fine. And the thing is, it's sometimes I think I've found it easy because generally birth contact is done with mum. So mum is not dealing with a potential threat of another mum, even though it's a foster person. This is a dad. So she is still the mum. And I remember very clearly, we looked after a baby, similar to you, Simone, who we had to administer many drugs after this child was coming down from some very heavy, some very heavy drugs. Now, I got on extremely well with mum. And mum had decided in her head that it would probably be a good idea if this little boy lived with Dennis and I, because there's no other women there. So I'm still the mum. I can go out and I can get my hits here and there, but it's okay because the two dads are looking after him. So that was quite a strange. That didn't happen, by the way, but she had it in her mind that that would be a good idea. So sometimes it can be a little bit tricky, but we've had no real issues. Just recently, we did a restoration, so I had 6 months of very close contact with the mum because these two boys were going back, and Barnardo's had set up a plan, which was great. We all knew what we were doing. We all worked to this plan. You'd see your kids one day this week and then 2 days next, and finally it ended up being weekends, etc. So we became very friendly, and there was no threat. I think birth parents sometimes think, well, there's a threat here. That person, they say they're carers, but what are they going to do? Are they going to take my kid? But we've generally had positive a positive time. It can be a little, look, you expect it to be a little bit tricky, but it's fine. I've got a thick
That's
skin.
good. Amy, what does that look like? Is every child in the foster care system required to have contact with their birth parents? Are people able to say, look, we prefer to have a child join our family that doesn't have that contact with their birth parents? Does Bernardo support that? Sorry, that's a lot of questions all at once for you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, look, most children in care will have some form of birth family contact. And children who are adopted, all adoptions are open adoptions in New South Wales now. And that's really based on the research that it is really important for children and young people as they grow and develop to understand their history and formulate their identities. So that's the purpose of contact. For children who will never be reunited and restored to their family. But for children who there might be a possibility of that restoration, then obviously it's really important for that relationship to continue and for them to practice and learn some of those parenting skills. And sometimes that's our foster carers who are teaching them those skills and educating them around some of that, whether that be with little babies and how to meet their care needs as that child develops, or whether it's updating them on what's been going on for a child that might be school age. So yeah, it is generally in every child's case plan. There are some scenarios where a child might not have contact with their birth parent because it's deemed unsafe, but that's few and far between. And unfortunately, there are lots of children where they would like to be having contact with their birth parents, but unfortunately, their birth parents aren't in a position to be able to support that because of the vulnerabilities that bring children into care. So some of their own challenges around mental health or substance use issues. So there's always a case manager there at the first contact, and they might be there ongoingly at visits. If there are any safety concerns, then we'd have that in a safe space. But generally, most of the visits are really child focused. They're out in the community. They're at parks and playgrounds, at the zoo, or sometimes as children get older, they choose the venues. And it really is best for a child to have that very informal sort of relationship between their carers and their family, so that it can just be a natural extended family style visit.
Brilliant. I mean, we say in the queer family world, we talk about it takes a village to raise a family, and it sounds like these kids really have that village around them with foster carers, family of origin, support workers, and all that kind of thing. So these kids are really set up for success by the sound of things. Simone, I'm keen to hear from you a little bit more around what your experience has been like as a queer person in within the foster care system. Can you tell us a bit of your history or any discrimination that you faced as a lesbian woman fostering kids?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, I wasn't out when I was starting in fostering. I didn't even know I was gay myself. But I came to realise, and then I had when I first met Louise, I'd had a bit of a break from fostering, just purely like a 6 month thing that I was between babies. And so I was with another agency. So I went to an NGO, a non government organization, after being with Docs for several years. And then I went to another agency. And I rang them back to say, hey, I haven't had a placement for a while, but I've now moved. And so I've got a different address and I have a new partner. And she also would like to do some training and foster with me. And so we can do it as a couple. And the moment the woman on the other end of the line from the organization, when I said it was a woman, that I was in a same sex relationship, she said, oh no. And by this stage, I'd been doing it with that particular organization for 7 years, I think, several babies. She said, oh no, I'm sorry, but we don't support same-sex couples fostering through us. You'll have to find another agency because we won't be able to give you any placements if you're in a same-sex relationship. So that was my first taste of
How devastating.
discrimination, very confronting, and I thought, what just happened here? Like, what?
Mm.
I was gobsmacked. I really was. I just wasn't expecting it. And it wasn't like that long ago, but it just was surprising to me. I just didn't think organizations that are all about families and giving love and support and a second chance at life and all of these things, all the reasons that I foster. And I thought, isn't that a bit like I was fostering as a single parent? And so I
Mm.
thought, now there'll be two parents to share the love and to the support and everything to foster these babies. But no. So anyway, I very quickly didn't fester on it. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just said, okay, thank you very much. And I got on the investigation hunt for an organization that will support my values and the values of the children and really put these foster children first. And that I came across Barnardos and I've never looked back. They've been so supportive and so they are so inclusive with everyone, not just queer folk, like just with every walk of life. They're just very grateful to have people that are willing to care for these children and take them into their homes. So
Mm.
yeah, I've had nothing but great treatment from Barnardos.
That's great to hear. And good on you for not letting that turn you away from fostering
Oh
altogether. Because I think a lot of
yeah,
people would have gone, well, screw this. I'm going to go on a holiday. But
yeah.
you kept at it.
Yeah, and what a loss it would have been because since then you've been with us, I want to say sort of 8 years
I think
and
so. Yeah,
fostered I don't know how many children during that time, and
yeah,
they would all have missed out on that. So
exactly,
we're lucky to snap you up. Yeah.
exactly.
And Amy, on that inclusion piece, if we've got people that are single or people that are, trans or gender diverse, are they able to foster? Because I think a lot of times people go, "Oh, I'm a single parent, I couldn't," or, "I'm in the middle of my transition, this isn't, and they won't accept me." But what is the stance from Barnardo's on inclusion?
Yeah, no, look, yes, we accept everyone. It's not about how you identify. It's about whether or not you can meet the needs of that child. So whether that's as a single person, whether it's as a couple, and people's lives change too. We've had people who've come to us as couples and then they've separated and we've worked around that. We've had people come to us who have then transitioned and we've worked around that as well. So it's really about are you able to meet the needs of a child in whatever type of care or age range you're looking at, and is now the right time for you? Obviously, if you're going through any really significant changes, it might not be the right time right now, but definitely it's not something that would preclude you from fostering when you are in the space to take on that. As John said, it can be a bit of a baptism of fire, so you want to be in a really good space yourself to be able to put yourself through that experience as well as you learn and grow.
Mm, brilliant. And we've had carers on here doing similar webinars in the past. And I remember there's a family who were a same-sex lesbian couple, and then one of them transitioned and is now a lovely trans dad. And that was all while they had their foster kids through Barnardo's, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, John fostered their
Mm.
children's siblings over the years.
Wow.
So
It's a
um,
small
yeah,
world.
it's a family here. I said that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and look, that wouldn't be the only couple. And I think it's something that, as time moves on, we've always tried to be at the forefront and accepting of people's identities and preferences. And it really is about the children. And as long as you're able to put their needs first, then we want you, we need you.
Mm. Brilliant. There's a great question in the chat here. Someone saying to you, Simone, sorry to hear you had to go through that, but glad you pushed through the negativity. I'm wondering if something like that happens between foster parents and biological family members during visits. So, has there ever been any homophobia from birth parents to either you, John, or Simone?
Look, I do recall one instance, and it was only one because I thought, no, 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 we're going to stamp this one out. And I need to choose my words carefully. The person was an immigrant to Australia and had been here some time, but their background culturally was different to ours. And so he took it very, very badly that his children had been removed and they were now being fostered by two homosexuals, as he called me, a homosexual. And I said, oh, it's a long time since I've been called that. Many other things have been in the middle, but anyway. Um, and I thought, no, I can't let that go. So the very first visit that we had, it was in a park, and there was a caseworker from Barnardos there at the time, whom he had harassed prior to this. And I went straight over to him and said, listen, I'm a homosexual that is looking after your boys. They are very safe. They are very happy. You can see that they're very healthy. And, I shook his hand very firmly and looked him in the eye. From that day on, he was my best friend. Not that I really wanted him to be, but he greeted me warmly every time. Sometimes people need to sort of realize, look, we're actually human beings
Mm.
and we're pretty decent. And here we are looking after your kids, and I have no judgment upon you whatsoever. I have been asked, or Dennis and I have been asked to look after your sons while a decision is being made, and that's what we're doing. I might say that those two boys are now safely adopted by a same-sex couple in the city.
Lovely.
So it all worked out.
Happily ever after.
Happily ever after, yeah.
Oh, and on that, as queer parents and queer foster parents, have either this is probably more a question for you, John, given the age of the kids that you have fostered and adopted, but have your kids had any negativity around being from a queer family at school or daycares?
No, not at all. Look, I think when um, probably about 2010, 12, we had one of our kids at school in Sydney, and it was so cool to have gay parents. So cool. Can we come over for sleepovers? Yeah, yeah, sure, they can come over for sleepovers. But no, no, not just one or two sleepover. No, no, no. The whole bloody class would be there. And this was not just in the school holidays, it was during every weekend. And that person, Amy, you know very well, Miss Musu. Um, and we, no parents said no. All the kids came over to our place. And subsequently, it's cool to have gay dads. Oh, can we go and stay with your gay dads? So we still have to this day, not so much with the young person that we have now, but we've always had the village staying here in our house, and it's wonderful. Sexuality is absolutely, it's not important. It's having a good time. It's being, love, noise, hiding the grog, all those sorts of things that any parent would go through. That, we love that. And it kind of miss that sort of with all these kids coming and staying. And they're the neighbours' kids. They're not just our foster kids. They're the kids from all over. And we live in a country town. So, there's kids from streets away arriving here to stay and have a sleepover. It's
Mm,
great.
that is
So
lovely.
we've not had any, there's been nothing. And I guess, moving on from that to a degree, if I may, we or I have particularly made myself known at all the schools. So, that's one thing I would say to any prospective foster carer. Make yourself known at school. Introduce yourself to the deputy, to the principal, to any other teacher you might see, so that when they see you in the in the yard, they know who you are. You say hello, etc. And for every school that we've been to, I mean, I've even had myself as the vice president of the P&C, and at the same time working in the canteen. Kids love it. Oh, look, there's so and so's dad. He's in the canteen. They all wave. It's great. So, that whole the village, we are the village people, Ashley.
Indeed. I find that at my kids' schools that it's often the queer parents that are the ones that are the P&C president that are at the barbecue on sausage sizzle
Yeah,
day
yeah, yeah,
that we show up and I think it just makes our families really approachable and part of the local community.
yeah,
And people go, oh, that's so and so, and that's one of his dads. I can never remember which one's which.
yeah.
But it's not out of discrimination. It's done out of queer parents wanting the best for their kids and showing up
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
every
that's
way possible.
great. We love it.
Mm. Simone, you mentioned earlier around the babies that come into your care sometimes have had a tricky start to life, and you're there getting them back on track and fattening them up. I think you said before their next placement, or they head back to their birth parents. Um, that must be really challenging, having these kids that have had a difficult start to life come into your care. Um, how do you manage that? And we touched on it before, but Amy, I'd love to bring you in and talk a little bit about the support from Barnardos around those challenging behaviours, particularly with older kids.
So for me with the babies, yeah, drug affected babies, it's not pleasant to see them go through that, but I have had enough experience now to know exactly what they need, and giving them those drugs that they need to wean themselves off whatever drugs they were on from the birth mother. And yeah, it's not a pleasant experience, but if you knowing what you're doing, and usually whatever hospital I'm collecting the child from, I'll tend to stay there with the child while they're in the NICU, and the nurses will show me about administering all the drugs that I need to. Um, and then, you take the child home, and there is the awful morphine screams every 3 hours and things like that. But it's all very temporary. And particularly with babies, a lot of those hard drugs are stored in their fat cells. And so they're tiny, tiny little things. And if they don't have many fat cells, they can withdraw very quickly. So we're talking a matter of weeks, and then you're through it. And then it's just a matter of fattening them up and making sure they have the right medical attention, and keeping across all their milestones and things like that, which I do, with my hands behind my back nowadays. It's all very, sometimes I joke when I go to the community health nurse for all their milestone checkups and things like that. And they'll often say to me, "Oh, so what can you tell us now today, Simone? Because you seem to know more about what's going on." So yeah, that's always fun. But yeah, but I can't speak for the older kids. Yeah.
John, do you want to jump in there? Have you had some older kids join your family that have had a tough start to life and presented with really tricky behaviours?
Yes.
Would you like to expand on that answer?
Look, I think, when they reach their teens, they have seen more than they really should have as kids. So it's a gently approach. We don't ask questions. We do get a background briefing from Barnardos, thank God. And that is not always um, up to date because there just isn't a lot necessarily, or the docs don't provide Barnardos with all the information. So we learn as we go along, and I guess you let them come to you. I mean, I'm thinking of one kid in particular. Didn't really talk about. I knew that there'd been violence, family violence. I knew that the children had run away, but we never broached that. We just lived a normal life, got it going, and then one night over dinner, we were laughing and joking about something, and all of a sudden this information just spilled out about what it was like living in this family home, the beatings, the hiding under the bed, the protecting their brothers and sisters from dad, making sure or hiding dad's grog, running away and hiding, uh, um, extraordinary stuff. But, it was told in a very matter-of-fact way. And I guess one of the important things as a carer of adolescents is to listen, because they've never been listened to ever. It was these two children in particular. Um, um, no, they were neglected. Nobody listened to them. They were just kids. Do as you're told. Look after the little baby. Get me another drink. Um, and so they came into our house, which is very calm and mostly, and they were listened to. We didn't make any judgment. We listened, and then finally they might ask, what do you think about that? And so carefully we would answer those questions, never criticizing mum or dad ever, just listening to what they have to say. And then if there was a comment to be made, it would be made about somebody else or something else. But they knew that the story was about probably their mum and dad. So, yeah, look, it can be challenging. I guess we've done it so many times now. There is a bit of a routine. You wait. The young person that we have in our care at the moment is shy. Her background is, not the best. And it really has taken her a good 5 months to have a conversation with us. She would speak yes and no, and yes, could I have that or whatever, but no conversation. It really has taken that amount of time for her to trust. And why should she trust us?
Mm.
That takes a little bit of time. And so for any new carer, it does take time for them to trust. And you're the role model. So they're observing what you're doing, how you're reacting to, each other, if you're in a couple, how they're reacting, how you react to them, because they'll stir you up. They'll throw a few curly questions at you or comments and see what your reaction is. I think I probably heard just about everything, but I never say never. So, we are fairly calm.
Mm.
Mm.
I imagine that's quite challenging, particularly for new foster parents. Amy, what does the upskilling process, for want of a better word, how when someone's, yes, they're about to take on some foster kids, what does Barnardo's do to prepare those first-time foster parents for what's about to hit them? The
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, there is the initial training that is for all of our carers, and that's around experiences of trauma and how that impacts, children's development and approaches that are helpful in parenting children who've experienced trauma. But it's really then going to be targeted around what are the needs of the child and this placement. And I think reflecting on, when John and Dennis have had sort of those adolescents come into their families. They've also had a case manager come into that family. And I say come into that family because sometimes they've been at hospitals together, or they've been at school meetings together, or they've been in cars traveling around the neighborhood trying to find a young person together. They've been on the phone for hours together. So that case manager is going to be there to hold your hand, to walk you through the steps. Now, it's not going to take away the challenge of some of those experiences, but you're doing it with someone, and there's someone guiding you to say, "Yep, look, that is really tricky, and maybe they have run away, and that's worrying, and that's unsafe. But this is what we can do. These are the steps we're going to take." And I think John made a really good point that it's about being there, and it's about staying with. And as long as you can evidence to that child that you're going to be there, you might not like their behavior, it might be really challenging, but you're still going to show up for them. Barnardos is going to be with you to support you through that. And maybe that's also through providing some counselling or other services to the child, or maybe it's to the carer, because as John said, there can be a lot of stuff that you hear as well, and it can be vicarious trauma caring for a young person that's experienced a lot. So over the years, some of our carers have also engaged in support so that they can make sure they can support a child or young person as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I mean, cost of living these days, life is expensive, and most of us have to work. What does that look like in terms of welcoming a young person into your family? Simone, you've got babies coming into your family, so I imagine you can't work if you've got a newborn coming into the family. Is that right?
No, this is my world. This is my work.
Oh, how lovely for you.
Yeah, but I don't find apart from, we both want to spoil little babies rotten and they get new outfits and things like that. But the allowance that Barnardos gives us for the short-term temporary care is generous enough that it pays for all of their nappies, their formula, their bottles, all of their needs really. And equipment wise, I have everything anyway. But when I was starting a new placement, there's always things that they can help to provide for that child if it's specific needs to that child, cots and high chairs and things like that, and car seats. Barnardos get you set up in the beginning. And yeah, so I haven't really felt any extra pressure when we take on a placement or can we afford it? My wife works full time, so that helps. But yeah, this is my voluntary full-time gig, and
You're calling in life,
and I don't find any squeeze on the budget when we have a placement. We just, we have the allowance and make it work.
Great. John, you've got kids at school coming into your care. Does that mean that you and Dennis are able to work, or were you in the past? What does that look like for you?
Well, I'm retired now, but when we first started, I had my own business, so I was sort of working pretty much 24 hours a day, and Den was doing most of the caring, although he did have a job as well. So now we're pretty much both retired, although Dennis has a part-time gig here in the Highlands. We're retirees.
Lucky you.
Yeah. And so, yeah, look, we of course, everybody gets an allowance. And if we feel that, look, we need to do X, Y, and Z, it's a matter of discussing it with the program manager at Barnardos and saying, listen, what do you reckon? I think we should do this. We've had a relationship for long enough now to talk very openly about these things. And we've never wanted for anything. And, Amy mentioned there before about, sometimes the carers need counselling. We've had access to that, open access to that, where it's been just phone this number and the person, the psychologist will give you 30 minutes of her time, just to sometimes just get another opinion or help you take a breather. So, and as far as everything else is concerned, there's not a lot that I mean, look, we could, I might put my hand up for a few things, Amy, but, you know, the allowance is adequate, and it's an allowance. It's certainly not a wage. It's an allowance that assists you in caring or providing really good care for a young person.
Thank you both. Amy, if people are working full time, what does that look like? Does Barnardo's have rules around whether people are able to work, not able to work, how much time? Um,
Yeah, look, it really depends on the care type. As Simone said, if you're caring for a newborn baby, you need to be available 24/7. Some people might share that with a partner. Some people might do that as an individual. And, as Simone said, she started this when her children were young and at school. And I should also note that allowance it's a tax-free allowance. So it's not considered part of your wage, as John said. It is an allowance that's to meet the child. So on top of that, you could be accessing any other relevant family benefits as well. So yeah, it really depends on the care type. If most of our respite carers are working, whether that's full-time or part-time, and a lot of our short-term carers are either young parents and with young children at school and want to be available but still want to do something to support their community. Or they might be like John and Simone, semi-retired to a certain degree, and so maybe one partner has more time to be available as well. And then for permanent care and adoption, it really reflects most of the community and parents in the community, which is a lot of dual income families. And so it's about at the time of the placement, I guess that's the crucial thing. At the really initial part of the placement, can you take some time off, as you would if you were taking parental leave to have a baby, to be able to adjust that child into your family. But that's when we're talking about a permanent planned arrangement. Really, that short-term crisis respite, we're going to work with what your availability is. So we do have some short-term carers that care for that work, and they might care for school-aged children or children that are preschool aged, and so have some of that daytime hours available to work as well.
So it sounds like it's pretty flexible and led by the best interest of the child, which
Absolutely.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Now we have a few minutes left. If there's any questions, please pop them in the chat. I forgot to mention that all the way through, but send questions through. Amy, I might hand over to you again, just so you can explain the process of becoming a foster carer. What does that look like? How long does it take? Yes.
Yeah, sure. So if you're interested, then you would contact Barnardos, make an inquiry. You can go to our website, barnardos.org.au. Obviously, if you're part of this webinar, you can contact Ashley, who's got our details. And so we just do a basic sort of criteria check to check that you're suitable to pass on to the next stage. And then there's the application. And, that varies in, I guess, what's involved depending on the care type. So if you're interested in adoption, it's a little bit more involved because we're duly authorising you as a prospective adoptive parent. But for all other care types, there's going to be those general checks for all carers, which are probity checks around, police check, working with children checks, some health checks, and some references. And that's relatively quick. And then it would be generally it takes about 3 to 6 months to onboard a new carer. Probably if you're looking at short-term care, we're going to be trying to push that through really quickly because we really need short-term carers. Or if you're interested in caring for siblings, we'd also push that through very quickly. But generally that's involving the application that you've submitted, a couple of days of training. So they're facilitated on a Saturday online. And then an assessment, and that's generally about 5 interviews. They're conducted either in your home or via video, and then that goes through to a panel who make a final decision about authorisation. But along the way, we're letting you know, are there any worries? And if there are, we're going to want to work with you around those. Sometimes people need to take a little bit of time. They need to resolve some medical things, or maybe they need to resolve something around their home environment, or chat about some stuff in their relationship a bit more. But we want you to come back. So we're going to work with you around any of those little speed bumps. And then after you're authorized, you could be placed with someone at any time. So that's really about what is the right match for you. Sometimes I have the right match for you during assessment and I know who's coming to you. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and that's okay. It's about the right child and the right match for your family, because that's what's going to be a successful placement.
You mentioned there the need for short-term carers and carer taking sibling groups. So that short-term care, how long are those placements for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't give you a really good, clear answer on that because a lot of that is dependent on what's happening in the court or whether or not we have a new long-term placement available for that particular child or sibling group. So we sort of say 6 months to 2 years. So I appreciate that doesn't sound that short-term to a lot of people, but I guess it's being realistic around we're not in control of those timeframes. So 6 months to 2 years. And, the younger the child, generally, the quicker that might be. The older the child, generally, that's going to take a little bit more.
Mm. And sibling groups, is that two, three, four? How
Yeah,
big are
all
those
the
sibling
above.
groups?
Look, I appreciate it's very difficult for anyone to care for multiple children. We do have a lot of sibling groups of 3 and 4. And where possible, we try to keep them together. But in some circumstances, what we're looking at is finding 2 families who live in proximity to each other and can develop, a cousin-like relationship with those families. And that can be really nice because you then get to support each other along the journey. And, you have someone else at birth family contact with you. And we've had some really lovely outcomes where those families have gone on to adopt and become the backup guardians for each other's children as well. So look, we do need carers for siblings. And if you have the space and that capacity, then there's a really high need to keep siblings together. And we generally see that children in care have more siblings than sort of the average family in the community. So it is important to maintain those relationships.
So if anyone's sitting at home feeling a bit bored and thinking, I've got a big house, I just want my life to be crazy.
Yeah,
Let's throw
Just
in
do
4
it.
young
Don't think
people.
about it.
that's what John says. If someone, when a child leaves, is it's very quiet. It's very quiet.
Oh, thank you for that, Amy. I popped in the chat there a link to your website as well, where people can find out a little bit more information. And if they're interested in finding out more, jump on that Barnardo's website and call the carer intake line. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, our care inquiry team. And or if there's people that so friends or family members that are thinking about how to start their family or maybe thinking about having children in their lives, then word of mouth is the best way for us to recruit. So, if you've watched this and thought about someone in your network, then please pass on our information as well.
John and Simone, before we go, any last pieces of advice? You're veterans of this. You've opened your home to so many children in need over the last 20 years. What advice would you give to people who are on the fence, thinking, "Oh, should I? Shouldn't I?" Simone, I'll hand to you first.
Well, I would say, I think if you've already come to this stage and you're considering it, then you must have that passion in you. And I'd say just do it. Just give it a try, even if you are starting out with respite. Although sometimes respite isn't the best place to start because sometimes you can get children that really need that respite. And, maybe just take on your first placement and give it a go. You'll soon work out whether it's for you or not. But I think if you've come this far, then you have a passion to do it.
Pick up the phone, call the carer intake line. John, what would you say to anyone who's
Look,
thinking
I
it?
would wholeheartedly agree with Simone. Give it a go. And I also agree that it's not rocket science.
Mm.
If you have reached that stage in your life, and you're a decent human being, you've got a bit of empathy and some structure in your life, there's not a lot more, just some love And it's easy. Take two, take three. It's much easier to have two because, whilst you're doing something else, the two of them are entertaining each other or tearing the house apart. So, and look, at my grand age, it keeps me young.
I bet. Well, thank you so much, Simone and John, for your time and for sharing your story with our community. It's always lovely to hear from people from the Rainbow Families community to hear their experiences. And Amy, thank you for joining us as well and giving all of your expert advice. Um, we will leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate your time and sharing your stories.
Thanks, Ashley. Bye.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Bye for now.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.